Okay, so we're on. Welcome to Yoga in the Dragon's Den. We are very happy today to have with us James Altucher. Am I saying your name correctly, James?
Yeah, it's like I'll touch her fast. I'll touch her.
Altucher. Okay, good, good. James he has just written a very successful book, which is Choose Yourself, and I have a copy of it here. Um, and I've been trying to to understand what you are doing, and I've been reading stuff here and there about you, James. So I know that you are an entrepreneur and investor. You write a blog, and you have written a few books. But it's really difficult. I mean, I'm finding it really difficult to try to describe you in a few sentences. So I was wondering if you could tell us more about who you are and what you are about.
Yeah, so I've started a bunch of companies. Some of them have worked out, and many of them have failed. And I've kind of learned from both the successes and the failures. I've written 11 books. I write a blog that's very successful. It gets about 3 million visitors a year. Um, what else? I'm on the boards of a lot of companies. I'm an investor in a lot of companies, but I think my primary focus is on writing. And I write about all sorts of topics, not just business or anything like that. You know,
Oh,
my latest book, Choose Yourself, which has been a bestseller, is basically kind of how you have to choose yourself for success. And I don't necessarily mean financial success, but I mean success from the inside out. You have to choose yourself on the inside first before you find success externally.
right. I was just reading your book a few days ago, and I really like this image that you're writing that you use in this book about how choosing yourself is kind of like being an ocean within yourself, and that once you have built up this happy ocean of happiness within yourself, everything else, a good job, finances, and a new relationship, if you want a new relationship, are just things that were just are things that are just meant will just manifest on the outside more or less naturally as a result of this ocean of happiness that you have built inside. Do I remember? Is this a correct description of what you're saying?
Yeah, basically, you wanna. Many people want to have a positive effect in the world. That can mean many things. Maybe it means you want to solve global warming. Maybe you want to be successful for your family. Maybe you want to be inspirational for your friends. But the first thing is the ripple that goes out to the shores starts in the ocean within. And so you have to kind of create this very clear ocean, to have this positive effect on the shores. And the way I describe that you do that is, and this is very familiar to people in the yoga world, but you have to be healthy in a very physical way, whether it's yoga or eating well or sleeping well, all of these things. As it says in the Yoga Sutras, you can't, before you go on the path of enlightenment, you sort of have to make sure you're not sick. And,
Right.
being healthy is very important. But it's not just physical health, but also emotional health. Be around people who inspire you and who you inspire. It's mental health, so coming up with lots of ideas, but also learning how to calm your mind and avoiding things like regrets and anxieties. And this takes a lot of practice. You have to exercise that muscle, just like you have to exercise your yoga muscles. And then, of course, there's spiritual health, which doesn't necessarily mean enlightenment. I think enlightenment's a very dangerous word to use, but it just means being very grateful to the abundance that you have. Now, abundance can be viewed in a material way, but also abundance can be viewed in a very spiritual way. So, either way you want to use it. But again, it's those four areas of health: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. That kind of cleans up the ocean and the ripples that you send out to the shores. The shores are pain and pleasure on either shore, and you're the river flowing in between those shores, and you want to make sure that river doesn't get stopped for too long at any one point. You're always going to feel pain and you're always going to feel pleasure, but you don't want to kind of stop there. You want to flow right out into the ocean.
Right. Very interesting. I have never heard this image before, but yeah, the idea of a river flowing between two shores. kind of like the middle way, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Because as a human being, there's certain things we can't avoid. Okay? Many people try to avoid bad thoughts, but you're always going to have bad thoughts. You're going to walk in the street and you're going to see some guy across the street and he's going to be wearing a suit, and you're just going to think, or I shouldn't say you, I'm going to think, I hate that guy, he's wearing a suit. But, it's just the same way you get hungry, you need to eat, you get tired, you need to sleep, your brain gets too tired and wants to be active, so it starts being anxious or regretting things or hating things. All these things are kind of on the shores. But inside, you're the river that flows between these shores. But it's very easy to get stopped, to hate too much, to want to eat too much, to want to be too focused on material goods. We need material success in order to feed our family. Nobody will deny that. But if you get too hung up on it, it stops the flowing that's within.
Right, right. Very interesting. So, this brings up one of the things that you discussed in your book, which is you talk about exercising the ideal muscle, and one of the things that you discuss is how it is to come up with 10 ideas every day. Honestly, I haven't been able to do that. I'm still working on that. But it just occurred to me because when you said that, very often we may also have bad thoughts. So I guess my question is, what happens if you come up with evil ideas? Like all the ideas you have discussed in your books are, pretty positive ideas, like starting a new business or creating something that adds value to the life of others. But what if somebody out there comes out with 10 ideas that are about, I don't know, world domination or starting a drug cartel or something like that? Would you have any advice to offer somebody who takes your book and comes up with 10 evil ideas?
Yes. So there's two pieces of advice for that, really. One is the point of coming up with the 10 ideas a day is not to have a good idea or a bad idea or a positive idea or an evil idea, but just to exercise the idea muscle. Because it's just like when you exercise with yoga, you don't say to yourself, okay, that's it. I did the first or second series of yoga, now I never have to do it again. No, tomorrow you do it again. You don't even think about how good the day before was or bad or whatever. You just, every day you do it. It's a daily practice for you.
Yes.
And you build those muscles. So the idea muscle is the same way. It's not like you come up with an idea and say, okay, this is it. This is the idea that's going to change the world. I throw out my ideas every day and I start fresh the next day. Sometimes I play around with ideas, sometimes I just forget them and move on. The idea is to become an idea machine. Just like yoga you become deeper and deeper into yoga as you do it every day. You become deeper and deeper into your ability to come up with ideas and explore your mind every day. And so that's really one point. Now, maybe one day you will come up with an idea that's a great business idea. You could always, what I try to do is I come up with an idea and I come up with what's the next execution step. Again, it doesn't have to be a good idea. I'll give you an example. So I want to have so my book came out, it's 67,000 words. I wanted to come up with a t-shirt. One of my ideas one day was to come up with an idea for a t-shirt that had all 67,000 words on the t-shirt. Totally dumb idea. Not good or a bad idea, just an idea. I don't care.
Right.
And so the very first step was, well, what would it look like on a poster? So I contacted somebody who makes t-shirts and posters, and I gave them my book, and I said, can you make a poster and then a t-shirt with all 67,000 words that would be readable? Very easy, next execution step. So I did that, and then, I don't know if you can see behind me, this is the poster, all 67,000 words of my book are on this poster, and it's completely readable.
Wow.
And so again, not a good idea or a bad idea, just an idea.
Okay.
I decided to do it. Most ideas I don't do. Anyway, the second step of advice is to not focus, just like in yoga, you don't focus on just the physical yoga. In fact, in the Yoga Sutras, there's very few of the, I forget, 195 lines of the Yoga Sutras, there's very few, maybe 3, that actually have to do with the physical practice. But there's a lot that has to do with breathing and the mental and emotional and spiritual. There's all other things mentioned in the Yoga Sutras. Similarly, if all you're doing is the idea muscle and building that up, it won't really work towards bringing health. You really have to focus on physical health, emotional health, which is being around people who love you and who you love, and spiritual health as well, because this avoids having anxieties or regrets or what I call time traveling, where you spend too much time in the future worrying about things or too much time in the past regretting things. If you do all of this, your idea muscle won't focus too much on ideas about world domination or anything like that. You'll just naturally gravitate towards more positive ideas. It'll be a very natural thing. Again, just like with yoga, your form becomes better and better every day. And even when you're looking at other people, that their form is off. It's the same thing will happen with the idea muscle. Your idea muscle will be more and more in correct form.
Right, right. Very nice. So, so for the last few minutes, as you are explaining what the four bodies, you make a lot of references to yoga, and since this is a yoga blog, it makes me really curious. So I understand that you have practiced and probably still practicing some form of yoga, and you have been to Mysore a couple of times with Claudia. So that really makes me curious. How much of I guess I really have two questions. The first question is how much of what is written in your book is influenced by your experience with yoga, and I guess the second question, which is also related, is how much of your yoga practice was the motivation for motivating you to write this book in the first place?
Well, so the first question, I think the book was influenced by yoga quite a bit, but I think yoga itself is influenced by many, many traditions. There's a key essence that runs through yoga that's also in Buddhism, that's also in Taoism, that's also in Christianity and Judaism. I don't think you can isolate any one religion or set of beliefs. Religion is a strong word. Any one set of beliefs and say, this is it. This is the only way to go. As we know from recent books, some of yoga is 2,000 years old, some of yoga is 100 years old. So, particularly on the Ashtanga tradition. So it's hard to say the book is any more influenced by yoga or Buddhism or anything else, but it's also influenced by my own experiences. So I had failed miserably at business. I was broke and bankrupt and lost house and family, and I had to figure out at one point or several points a way for me to lift myself off the ground.
Yeah.
And it's from these experiences that kind of motivated later success and later exploration into various spiritual disciplines, which in turn motivated even greater success, both spiritual and material. They're all linked together. They're not separate. They're all intertwined. I think too many people on the spiritual side are afraid of the word success, but it is not the case. They're all one unit, which the Yoga Sutra talks about. The other thing is, and this is what Buddha talks about, Buddha mentions what I talk about might not apply to you. It worked for me. It worked for me inside my body. And so Buddha would suggest to people, try it for yourself and see what works for you. So I'm not comparing myself to Buddha, but again, from my book, these are the techniques specifically that work for me and may not work for anybody else. And again, if you take the yoga analogy, Krishnamacharya, before Pattabhi Jois even, he very much individualized Ashtanga yoga to each person coming to see him. And you see it from his different students, whether it's Iyengar or Ramaswamy or Pattabhi Jois. They each have their own version of yoga that they learn from Krishnamacharya. And I think, again, everybody has to sort of find kind of the path and discipline where they choose themselves.
Right.
And and they say, okay, I've explored enough outside. This is what's really connecting with me inside, and then that will evolve. Their method of choosing themselves will evolve on its own.
Right, right. So it becomes a sort of organic inward directed process of unfolding, so that you choose yourself in a way that is most true and natural to yourself.
Yes, exactly. Because no one discipline is going to work for everybody. Now, I do think the Ashtanga yoga that's taught in Mysore, is very good in that it applies to a broad number of people. But ultimately, in terms of how you use yoga or Buddhism or Taoism or spiritual beliefs and how you intertwine that with your actual real life in the real world, is going to be different for each person.
Yes, yes, interesting. So this is I actually, the next question I thought about is actually more of a personal kind of question. So feel free to answer it in whatever way you choose. Um, so you speak about being more interested in this spiritual journey as a result of all these crises you have been through in your life over the last decade or so. But I'm also wondering, has how much has meeting and being with your wife Claudia influenced your spiritual development in this way? The reason why I'm asking is because I'm a big fan of both your blog and Claudia's blog, and
I am also.
yes, and so the two blogs, your blog and Claudia's blog, they seem to be rather different blogs on the surface. One is Ashtanga Yoga Mother Earth, the other one is the Altucher Confidential. But then, as you read more, as I read more and more, I start to see resonances and commonalities between the two blogs. So it really makes me wonder how much of what James Altucher is saying is influenced by Claudia, and how much of what Claudia is saying is influenced by James Altucher. So, do you mind saying something about that?
Sure. Well, first off, Claudia has been a huge influence on everything I've done. Like, I never would have gotten into yoga at all. I never would have gone to Mysore, or Encinitas, or any of the many yoga trips we've done and yoga practices that we do. I mean, she's obviously a daily practitioner and has greatly influenced me in terms of my readings in yoga and readings in many other topics related to spirituality and meditation and silence and physical health and so on. I think at the same time, I would not have met somebody like Claudia. It's not like I was this different person and then I met Claudia and she completely changed me. I would not have met like a great life partner like Claudia if I wasn't ready for it. And the way you become ready for someone to be in your life like that is again by following, by choosing yourself to be ready, by loving yourself and by making sure you begin to eliminate the negative things in your life. And that means learning to say no also, because there's a lot of influences that you're used to or addicted to, or a lot of things that are around you that you feel you have to do, but until you start getting used to saying no, you realize you don't have to do it as much as you thought. And so maybe going out with people who are not so good for you, or being friends with people who are not such great influences, or trying too hard to achieve, a certain type of material success, or whatever it is that is negative in your life, eating, drinking too much, eating too many bad foods, not sleeping enough. You have to learn to say no to the things that are going to distract you from what's important in life, because you're not going to get a second chance. Okay, if you waste tonight, you're not going to get a second chance at tonight. And so it's important to make as much of the chances and opportunities you have in front of you. And part of that for me was saying no to a lot of things, so I was able to say yes to the good and the positive things that were coming into my life, like meeting Claudia. And so, like I say, it's both ways. And then I think she's also, it's definitely influenced her as well. Like we our lives have become intertwined. I mean, we work together all day on all these different projects. She could easily have been the author of Choose Yourself as well. It just happened to be me.
Yes, yes. Well, speaking of saying no and saying yes, thank you for saying yes to this interview.
Oh well, thank you for asking me, Nobel.
Yeah, but before I let you go, there is one more question I want to ask you, and I couldn't resist asking this because I actually teach in a college, and I know that you have written this book called 40 Alternatives to College. And I've actually, I find your ideas really compelling. Despite the fact that I teach college, and I've been sharing your ideas with some of my students as well, because I think that even if you are within the college industry, it is still important to have a critical understanding of what other people might have to say about being in college. So I guess I understand that you have a lot of you are quite skeptical about this whole idea of having to go to college in order to be successful. Um, but I was just thinking about this yesterday. Yesterday I was reading on the news about this about the Oregon legislatures coming up with a paid forward program, and the idea is that rather than saddling students with lots of student loan debt, they will do something different, and what they will do is to have students go to college first, and have the state pay for the tuition upfront, and then after graduation, the student will pay for college from as part of a regular deduction from their paycheck. So, for example, if you went to a four-year college, you'll be paying back as you once you get into the workforce, and you'll pay back at a regular rate of about 3% of your annual income. So I was just wondering, as I was listening to that news, I was wondering what you would think of that. Does this, I mean, one big problem with college today, as you know, is the ridiculous amount of student loan debt that so many people are accumulating. Do you, in your mind, do you think this paid forward idea would make college better?
No, I think there's many problems with college. It's not just, I mean, obviously the biggest problem right now is the fact that student loan debt is so enormous, and these 18-year-olds, it's like sending them to war. They don't know what they're getting into. An 18-year-old has no sense of what $1 trillion in debt means, or what individually $100,000 in debt means. They're going to have to pay that back for the rest of their lives. Now, you mentioned a solution in Oregon, but no matter what, education's not free. So if the students aren't paying for it up front, then that means the taxpayers are paying for it, and they may or may not want to pay for it. So I think it's unfair to have any kind of policy. Like, why should the state of Oregon pay for students to have an education? And then what you also said reminds me a little about how serfdom works. So the landlord gives you your piece of land for free, but then for the rest of your life you have to pay the landlord back with often menial tasks in order to pay him back out of your income. So I don't think that's a solution. Part of the problem is that colleges in general, not all colleges, but colleges in general are not hiring teachers to teach, but they're hiring teachers to publish and to do research, because that's what gets the college known, that's what allows them to hike tuitions, that's what allows them to attract students. And so it's very interesting that faculty income has gone up faster than inflation for 40 years in a row. Now, Nobel, I'm not saying you should get paid less or anything, but it's just an interesting statistic. And the question students have to ask is, well, what am I really going to college for? Am I going to learn? Because I could learn in other places. I could learn on the job, I could learn in a library, I could learn by traveling around the world. And yes, all of that costs money. Well, actually, learning in a library or learning on the job does not cost money. But traveling around the world costs a little bit of money, but not as much as college. So there's many ways for students to learn just as much and cheaper. Not that college is bad, but it's just that students can learn more in a cheaper way. And I think that's what I recommend in general, is try to look at your alternatives, at least consider them, try them. If later on you want to go into debt and take that chance, that's fine also. But make sure at 18 you don't make a bad decision that could affect the next 40 years of your life.
Right. And in this society, we tend to take for granted that when you reach the age of 18, you are at the age of consent. But I think we tend to overlook the fact that people at 18 are still, they're still young, and they may not have the perspective or the life experience to see what they're getting themselves into.
Yes, so here's what historically 18-year-olds have done in society. Young 18-year-old men kill people.
Oh.
So that's what 18-year-old men are most known for doing, is they kill other people. And so the way you kind of solve the problem is you either send them off to a war so they kill people in other countries, which I'm against them doing, or you send them off to college. Now it used to be, 500, 600 years ago, a college would be, or a university would be surrounded by a fence and a gate, and there would be armed soldiers, and the soldiers would be facing in to make sure the students couldn't get out.
Nope.
Because you want to make sure the 18-year-olds are all in one place where they're not going to do harm to people. But, that changed. Of course, universities now have many types of people, and also there's women, there's men. So, it's a different type of campus now. But the same idea holds. The original purpose of a college campus was to confine your 18-year-old men so they wouldn't be violent. And we just have to figure out a better way now than college to educate 18-year-olds.
Interesting. Well, this gives me a lot of this gives me and the readers of this blog a lot to think about. Okay. Maybe this might be a good time to end the interview for now. But I look forward to chatting with you again in the future. This has been
Yes.
A great conversation. So
Thank you, Nobel.
yeah, and this interview will be published on my blog. It will be on my blog, so everybody will get to see it, and hopefully that will generate more traffic to your blog as well.
Yes, hopefully.
So yeah, and you have a good rest of the day, and please say hi to Claudia.
I will, Nobel. Thank you very much. Claudia says hi too.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.